Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. We're going to get started with loving kindness meditation this morning. So I'll guide you guys in a meditation session. Then afterwards, we're going to be discussing how to eliminate fears. Then after our mid-morning break, we'll have a discussion on this being of God, helping you guys to understand that being and how to either get to enlightenment with a relationship with this being or without one. And then in the afternoon, I'm going to be teaching you meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, as well as the meditation to realize non-self. So the way that I'm going to do the meditation for loving kindness is, now that you guys have been meditating for a little while, I'm not going to do the breathing mindfulness meditation guidance. I'm just going to do chanting. We'll go into the breathing mindfulness meditation. You can do that on your own, where you're focused on the breath, and anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath. And then I'll come in with the loving kindness meditation, and then we'll go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then come out with the chanting. So essentially, you guys are doing your breathing mindfulness meditation on your own, with me providing the guidance for the loving kindness meditation. So if you'd like to join, I'm going to start with the chanting, and then we'll come and go from there. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhoto Bhagavati. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May Mom and Dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I come into contact with today be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone online as well. Nice to see everyone. Today's class, I'm going to be talking about the topics of eliminating fear, talking about God, helping you guys to understand this being, how you can either have a relationship with this being or not. And then I'm going to be teaching you this afternoon the meditation to eliminate sexual craving and meditation to realize non-self. And since we're going to be learning 2 new meditations this afternoon, I'd like to stop here for a moment and see if you guys have any questions on loving kindness meditation, because we're going to start doing those other meditations here soon, and just to give you guys a chance to see if there's any questions at all you'd like to ask about loving kindness meditation. Is there anything you guys would like to ask? Let me check online here. Okay, I don't see any questions online either. Okay. All right. So let's move into our first topic today, which is eliminating fears. Are you really scared? This is actually in the first book in chapter 17. I teach this to help you guys to be able to learn how to eliminate all your fears, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have any fears, including the fear of death. So if there's certain fears that you have in your mind right now, they're not permanent. You can actually eliminate these fears so that you don't have to keep experiencing that over and over and over again. In order to understand how to eliminate fears, though, you need to first make sure you understand right view from the Eightfold Path. On Monday, I taught right view, through helping you to understand the 3 universal truths and the 4 noble truths. If you guys weren't here then, it's important that you understand what the 4 noble truths are, because this is where you're going to learn what is the problem in your mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And you can learn this in a way that you can independently verify what's actually causing your discontent feelings. So on Monday, I taught about the universal truth of impermanence, helping you understand what that is and how you can independently verify that things are constantly changing in the world. We talked about discontentedness, which is the problem in the mind, these conditioned feelings where the mind is forming some feeling based on a condition. Then we talked about the universal truth of non-self, helping you to understand how to realize non-self and how this gets in the way of you being peaceful and joyful, how the mind is clinging to the body, the self-image, or clinging to the mind, the self-identity, and how you can eliminate this from the mind and get to the peace and the joy. Then we talked about craving, desire, attachment. I helped you guys to understand what this is. This is the mind's longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. Whereas if you get what you want, you get happy. But if you don't get what you want, you get angry or sad or frustrated. This is the mind's longing, yearning, the craving, the desire, the thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. This is where the mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide this lasting satisfaction and fulfillment. So it chases after it. It's not the object itself. It's within the mind. It's the mind longing, yearning for the object. So the mind pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection. This is craving, desire, attachment. It's so vital that you understand this. Then I explained the 4 noble truths in a way that you could independently verify, explaining that the problem is discontentedness. That's the first noble truth. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. That's the problem that you're experiencing. The mind's going up and down, up and down. It's forming its feelings based on some condition. That if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy, and if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or sad or frustrated. There's other discontent feelings as well, all those ones that I showed you back here. These conditioned pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones, because if you allow the mind to get conditional happiness, when that condition changes, it's going to end up moving to the painful feelings like anger, sadness, and frustration. What's causing this is in the second noble truth, where the Buddha is explaining that craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the craving for permanence is what's causing all the discontent feelings. So if you have a certain longing, yearning in your mind, you'll get happy when you get what you want, but you'll get sad or frustrated when you don't get what you want. So if you wake up in the morning and it's sunny outside, you might get so happy and so excited. But then when it rains, you're going to get sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. Or if your bank account balance is here, you'll get really happy and excited. But then when it goes here, you'll be angry or sad or frustrated. The mind is craving permanence. Or if you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe you'll be so happy and excited. But then when you guys break up, you'll be sad or frustrated or angry or lonely or bored. This is because the mind's holding on. It's craving permanence. It's wanting things to be a certain way. So this is the whole cause of the discontent feelings, is that the mind is craving permanence, wanting things to be permanent, but yet you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is impermanent, but yet the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. Then the third noble truth is explaining the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you can train the mind to eliminate this longing, yearning, this chasing after the objects of your affection and forming your inner feelings based on whether you get this thing or not, then you can eliminate this discontentedness. And what's going to help you to be able to accomplish that is in the fourth noble truth. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. That's the core central teaching that the Buddha taught that's helping you to learn how to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. There's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. You would need to know that path inside and out. You're going to need to study with the original words of the Buddha and walk through it in a way that you can independently verify it. And that's what I did on Monday. And if you missed that, it's all recorded. You can learn that. And I teach it many times. It's in books. It's in audiobooks. There's many videos I've done on this. There's podcasts and all these different ways that you can learn it. So you're going to need to learn the Eightfold Path so you can gradually make your way through eliminating all discontentedness. So as you're developing your Eightfold Path and that's coming into practice more and more, learning each one of these factors and each one of these areas. As you learn this and you're practicing it in day-to-day life more and more, you're going to get to a point where you're generally training to eliminate all your different cravings, desires, attachments. But then you're going to notice certain fears sometimes that you have. You might have fear of death, or you might have fear of being poor, or you might have, maybe you leave your mobile phone at home and you have fear when you're outside all by yourself and you realize you don't have your mobile phone. There's any number of fears. You might be afraid of heights, afraid of spiders or snakes or things like this. So there's ways to go in and almost surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments that are producing the fears. And that's what I'm going to teach you. But it's important that you understand the Four Noble Truths first of what's causing this. What's causing it is the craving, the desire, the attachment, the craving permanence. The mind's craving for things to be a certain way. So for example, with someone who's maybe afraid of death, they're holding on, craving permanence. They're craving permanent existence. They're craving to be in life and in this world permanently. Or they're craving their material possessions and holding on to that. Or they're craving their relationships and holding on. They're attached. They're craving for these things to be permanent. So now when you get close to death and you realize you can't hold on to those things permanently, that the mind's going to have to let those go, the mind gets afraid. Or you might be afraid of the pain that you might experience at the time of death. Sometimes people are afraid of that. Or maybe you're afraid of spiders. What the mind's craving here is it's craving to never see a spider. It's longing, yearning for this permanence. It never wants to see a spider. That's the permanence that it's craving. Or if someone gets afraid when maybe they left their mobile phone at home, then when they're out and about in their day-to-day life and they realize they don't have their phone, now their mind's craving the permanence. They want their phone to be permanent, and now this fear arises in their mind. Okay, so this is a vital understanding so that now I can go in and I can explain to you how to eliminate your fears. Because once you have the Eightfold Path well underway, you're going to be generally training the mind to eliminate all your cravings, desires, attachments. But where you see fear arising, you're going to need to do some special things to be able to eliminate it. That when the craving, desire, attachment is arising, you would actually like to place the mind in the situation that it's fearing in order to train the mind to let this go. You need to remind yourself when you're doing this that you're not causing any harm, so no harm's going to come to you. So oftentimes what we do is we try to cling and we try to hold on thinking that this is going to solve the problem. So I'm going to give you some examples here so you can see what I'm talking about putting the mind in the situation that it fears and training it that there's nothing to fear. One time I was leaving my house. I was about 5 minutes away from my house and I reached for my mobile phone and I didn't have it. And I noticed this fear came up in the mind and I got fearful right away. And I happened to be at a red light and I cut that off. I cut off the fear. My mind became calm, and right away my mind wanted to turn around and go back to the house in order to be able to get the phone. And that's what the mind was thinking initially. It was like, let me turn around, let me U-turn. I was really close to my house. Let me go get my phone. But as I sat there, I realized this isn't going to solve the problem because the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting this phone to be permanent. Going back and getting the phone doesn't actually eliminate the true cause. The true cause is the craving, desire, attachment. The mind wanted this phone to be permanent. So if I went back and got the phone, it just allowed the craving to stay in place. So instead, what I chose to do is I chose to put the mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in, which I was supposed to be outside for an hour and a half that day and go do a couple of things, but instead I extended my time outside. I continued in my day. I went to the movies, I went to dinner, I did all kinds of things. I just walked around the mall, did different things. I stayed out for about 5 or 6 hours that day without the phone. I was training the mind, hey, this phone is impermanent. You're not going to have it with you permanently. And this mind needed to learn how to be peaceful and joyful, regardless of whether it had the phone or it didn't have the phone. So turning around to get the phone wouldn't have solved the problem. Instead, by being outside without the phone and training the mind that it didn't need this phone, then the mind could ultimately let go of its craving for this phone to be permanent. So then when I went home about 5 or 6 hours later, I didn't just go into the house and rush to the phone and check to see who might have called me or anything like that. I just left the phone where it was at. I played with my son. We kind of watched TV a little bit or whatever we did. And then maybe 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later, I went and got the phone and looked at it and saw what was going on the phone. And then I waited about 2 or 3 days. And then I intentionally did this. I left the phone at home. And when I went outside, I didn't have the fear, but there was kind of like this awkwardness. It just kind of felt weird to be outside without the phone. So there was kind of like some residual discontentedness. And then I stayed outside again for an extended period of time. I came home, and when I came home, I didn't go rush to the phone and look to see what happened. I just left it where it was, and then I did whatever I was going to do at home, and then I eventually went and got the phone. And then I waited another 2 or 3 days or so and did the same thing. And this time I noticed that the mind was quite peaceful outside without the phone. And I did this a few times in order to basically put the mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in. And I didn't notice any fear after doing it several times. So I felt like this craving had been eliminated. And then about 2 months later, I was again headed out of my house. I was about 5 minutes down the street. I reached for my phone and it wasn't there. And I noticed that there was no fear. It was just like, oh, well, and I just kept on going in my day. Where before I had a lot of fear, because there was a craving there. But since I had extinguished it by putting the mind in the situation it didn't want to be in, when I left the house inadvertently without the phone 2 months later, there was no fear, no awkwardness, no nothing, right? And that had given me the confidence that this craving had been eliminated. Then about a year after that, at one point I dropped my phone on the floor in the house and the whole screen shattered. And I looked at the phone and I started laughing. And I said, of course, impermanence, right? Of course, this phone just broke, right? And this is how you can know that your mind is either attached or not attached. If your mind's attached, if you're having craving, desire, attachment, you're going to experience discontentedness whenever there's any kind of change in your life, like your phone breaking, you'll be discontent. Or you leave your phone at home, you'll be discontent. You'll want to always have that phone with you. Your mind will be craving to hold on to the phone. But when you can train your mind to go outside like this without it, then you can train your mind to let go. So if you haven't done that yet, you're going to need to train your mind like that to be sure that when you go outside, that you're not worried about your phone. You're not worried about being outside without a phone. You're going to need to learn how to leave these things behind and put your mind in that situation from time to time. And then as you do that, your mind will let go of its craving so that then someday if your phone breaks or if you leave it at home, you won't experience any discontentedness. So you're going to need to put your mind in the situation that it fears. So let me give you some other examples. Let's just say that you feared snakes or spiders or something like this. You're going to need to put your mind in this situation because you're not going to be able to go through life and never see a spider or never see a snake. And if you don't do anything to address it, when you see that being, you're going to be fearful. So what I suggest you do is you look at some pictures of spiders or snakes, maybe on the internet or in a magazine or something like this. And you look at them and you might see the fear starting to arise in the awkwardness, and you cut that off and you cut that off and you cut that off. And you do this over multiple sessions where you expose the mind to what it is that it fears. And now when you notice that you can look at pictures and be completely calm and peaceful, now maybe you increment it up a little bit. Maybe you go to a museum where these things aren't alive, but they're preserved. And now you can see their little hairs and their little eyes and, their skin and things like this, but they're preserved. They're not alive. And now you look at those for a little bit and you might notice some fear or some kind of feelings coming up and you cut that off. And you do that until you don't notice any more fear. But then you increment it some more and you go to a place where they're alive, maybe like a zoo or a pet store or something like this. And now you expose the mind to this. And now you do that a few times until you're not scared anymore. You don't have any fear. Right? So this is the way you can do that one. And there's other fears that you might have. Maybe like you're afraid of heights. So maybe what you do is you go up to a mall where you go up to the first floor and you look over the side and you're like, that's not so bad. I feel okay. And you go up to the second or third floor and you look over the side and you're like, I don't know about this. And you just kind of keep looking and just kind of look over the side. You kind of train your mind like, hey, there's nothing to fear here. I'm not causing any harm whatsoever. No harm is going to come to me. And then you keep going up to higher and higher floors, and you do this over multiple sessions. And you might climb some ladders, you might go in some skyscrapers and things like this. You expose the mind to what it doesn't want to do. It doesn't want to be up high and look over the side. So you're going to need to do that in order to train your mind to let go of this craving. In modern psychology, they call this exposure therapy. You'll actually pay a lot of money to have somebody teach you this in modern psychology. They call it exposure therapy. You expose the mind to what it is that it doesn't want to experience. So you can do this with these kinds of things. Even death itself, you can do this, where you can expose your mind to it. So say you're afraid of death, and you know that you're afraid to get to the end of this life and actually die. Well, you're going to face that at some point. Death is either going to sneak up on you, and it's going to catch you by surprise, or you can go visit death. It's up to you. You can say, hey, death, I see you over there. You're going to come visit me at some point. So you know what? I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to come see you, rather than allow death to come sneak up on you. So what you do is you do something called contemplation of death, or reflection of death. This is something that the Buddha taught during his lifetime. What you do after you have your breathing mindfulness meditation practice well developed, the Eightfold Path and all these other things, then you get to a point in your practice where you might go sit quietly somewhere, you close your eyes, and you envision that you've died. Maybe you were in a terrible car accident. Maybe you ate something that was poisonous, or maybe you had cancer or something else like this. You play this out in your mind as if you've actually died. And now maybe the doctors or a police officer or something like this is calling your parents or calling your life partner, your children, telling them that, hey, you've died. And you live this out in your mind, and you ultimately convince the mind that you've actually died. Play it out as if you're like a fly on the wall, and you look at your funeral, whatever services that they're doing. You're not planning your death. You're not aspiring to die. You're just confronting it as if you have died, that you're essentially convincing the mind that you've actually died. And after you do this, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you play this out in your mind, you might actually grieve. You might actually cry. You might actually be very sorrowful. And that's the whole reason why you need breathing mindfulness meditation and the Eightfold Path on board, so that as these discontent feelings are arising, you're able to regain your stability after this session of reflection on death. Because the first time you do it, it might be very impactful, where you're very sorrowful and you're grieving about your own death. But then you wait 2 weeks or a month or so, and then you do it again. And you'll notice that your grieving is less, your sorrow is less, right? And then you regain your stability from that, and then you wait another 2 weeks or a month, and you do it again. And you keep doing it until you get to the point where you can confront death in this activity of contemplation of death, and you don't have any sorrow. There's no grief, there's no misery, there's no nothing, and you've just come to terms with, yep, this being's going to die. Yep, it's going to happen. No fear, no nothing, right? So this is called contemplation of death, or reflection on death. And you can do this for yourself if you have a fear of death, or maybe you have fear that your parents are going to die, or your life partner, or your brothers or sisters, or maybe you have animals or pets that you know that you have a lot of fear that they might die. You can do this with them as well, inside your own mind, that you can sit and envision that they've actually died, and then play that out, and then ultimately regain your stability, wait 2 weeks or a month, and then do it again. And you'd like to get to the point where you don't have any fear of anybody's death, your death or the death of anyone else. And this also will help you eliminate attachment to the people that are closest to you. That's something we were talking about at the beginning of the class. A lot of people are asking those kinds of questions, like how to eliminate attachment to like your life partner, your parents, your children, people like this. this is one of the ways to do that, is do reflection on death. So not only does it help you to eliminate any craving, desire, attachment, and eliminate fear, but it's going to help you eliminate your attachment to that person, because that's what's actually causing the discontentedness to arise, not only with the fear of death, but in your day-to-day relationships with these people, that you're attached to them. You're wanting them to be a certain way. You're craving permanence in that relationship. So if you can actually contemplate your parents' death, your grandparents, your children, whoever it is in your life that you're attached to, if you do this over multiple sessions, eventually your mind will let go. And it's going to be uncomfortable for you when you do this. You're going to experience painful feelings. The way that this all works is that because your mind has craving, desire, attachment, and you're holding on to things and you're getting certain pleasant feelings from those, when your mind starts letting go of these cravings, your mind's not going to get what it wants, and you're going to experience painful feelings. But when you walk through that and get to the other side, that's where the peace and the joy is. It's kind of like walking through the fire in order to appreciate the fresh air on the other side. Or another way to think about it is you join the mafia, and you might have got all these pleasant feelings when you join the mafia, but to get out of it, it's going to be really painful. And this is the way it is when you're letting go of craving, desire, attachment. It can be very painful when you're doing it. But once your mind actually lets go, that's where the peace and the joy is. As long as your mind keeps holding on and you're unwilling to walk through that pain, you're not going to be able to get liberated from these feelings. So oftentimes when we talk about enlightenment in this peaceful and joyful mental state, and how the mind's focused and concentrated, and you have all these great relationships and you're not in a bad mood anymore, it's like, oh wow, this just must be like floating on clouds. It must be like crossing over the rainbow. It must be like so wonderful. Yeah, it is when you get to that. But in the process of getting there, it can be somewhat painful as your mind is letting go of these cravings. So just understand that sometimes when I teach people about this, about contemplation of your death or the death of your parents or your loved ones, your life partner, your children, putting your mind in the situation it doesn't want to be in, to look at snakes and spiders, people are like, oh, why would I ever want to do that to myself? Well, that's because once your mind finally lets go of these cravings, then your mind's going to be peaceful, because all these things that I'm talking about, your mind's going to experience it at some point. It's only a matter of time. You're going to see a snake or a spider. You're going to be up high with heights. You're going to experience death. You're going to experience the death of the people around you. And you can let those things sneak up on you and catch you by surprise, or you can choose to confront it yourself on your terms when you're ready to do it. When you're ready to confront your own death, then you can confront it. Or when you're ready to confront those snakes and those spiders, you can confront them, right? You don't have to allow that to sneak up on you and catch you by surprise. Because if you eliminate your cravings, now when you experience these things, no big deal. There's a snake, no big deal. There's a spider, no big deal, right? So this is how you would accomplish the elimination of your cravings, desires, attachments. When you're experiencing these fears and any of these kinds of things, you can see what your mind is fearing and put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. And that's what's going to ultimately train it to let go. So let me know what questions you guys have on this. One of the things that we can do as you guys are asking questions, if you like, if you have certain fears, and you can't see how to do what it is that I'm describing, you can let me know. You can say, hey, David, I fear this, and I don't understand how to use what you just shared in order to put my mind in that situation. Can you help me? So you can explain the fear that you're having, and I will help you to understand how to put your mind in that situation, because you might not be able to see that. So you can ask those kinds of questions as well. So I think you have a question, yes? You will come back? Okay. Anybody else have a question? Yep. Those of you online, you can put your question into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
Hello. I think one of my biggest fear is making mistakes. And I don't know how do you confront that.
Sure. So you're going to make mistakes in life. It's going to happen. So you don't even have to induce this, because it's going to happen. The things that I'm talking about is like inducing it. But this one, you're going to make mistakes, so it's going to happen. You don't even have to induce it. So as it's happening, as you're making mistakes, you got to be able to see that, hey, I don't need to fear this. I don't need to feel guilty or shameful when these things have happened, because that's just the mind craving to be perfect. And you're not going to be perfect. The only time you're going to be perfect is when you get to enlightenment. When you get to enlightenment, you'll be functioning perfectly in the world. You won't be causing harm to other beings, and your mind will be completely peaceful and completely joyful. But on your way to enlightenment, you're going to have missteps. And when you have those missteps and you have those mistakes, that's your opportunity to cultivate wisdom. Because whatever you did that led to those mistakes, it's just from a lack of wisdom. So if you cultivate more wisdom in each one of these situations where you're making mistakes, then you won't make that mistake in the future, or at least you're less likely to make that mistake in the future. So each time you make a mistake, just use it as an opportunity to learn and cultivate wisdom. And if you notice any discontentedness arising, cut that off and remind yourself that you're not going to be perfect. That's a craving for perfection, craving for permanence. But when you do get to the enlightened mental state, you will be perfect at that point. You'll be functioning as a perfect human being.
And how do you know when you make a mistake? It's like when you feel, how do you really recognize when you made a mistake?
As you gain more and more wisdom of the Eightfold Path and all the other natural laws that the Buddha taught, you'll be able to see the mistakes that you're making, because you'll have the wisdom to know it's unwise. But in situations where you don't have that wisdom, essentially the natural law of karma is your best, most unbiased teacher, because the natural law of karma is going to show you whenever you're making unwise decisions, because you're going to experience unwholesome results. Wherever you're experiencing unwholesome results in your life, that's where you can look at that objectively and say, what did I do? What were the decisions I made that led to this particular outcome? Because what we tend to do with the lack of wisdom of the natural law of karma is whenever anything unwholesome is happening in our life, we tend to blame other people. And if you keep doing that, you'll never cultivate the wisdom that you need to solve this, because it's not other people that are causing these unwholesome things in your life. They're decisions that you're making. So if we just blame other people, we never cultivate wisdom and we never make different decisions. We keep making the same decisions that are leading to the exact same results. But whenever you're experiencing an unwholesome result, if you understand the natural law of karma, then you understand there's some decisions that I'm making that's leading to this. Let me figure out what those decisions are, and now I'll cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and I will experience different results. So whenever you see unwholesome things coming back to you, figure that out. And if you need help, that's where a teacher comes in. You reach out to your teacher, you're like, hey, these are the things that are going on in my life, and I have no idea. What are the decisions that I'm making that's leading to this? In fact, we had a young lady here in the last week or so. She spoke up and she's like, hey, I'm having all these problems. I'm going to the bars and people are groping me and touching me, and I don't understand what's happening here and how I can stop this. Right. And I needed to help her see that it's her decision to go to the bar, that when you're going to a bar, you're going around people who are drunk and intoxicated and using drugs, and they're not making wise decisions. This is your choice to go into those environments. And you didn't deserve this. It's not your fault that this is occurring, but there are decisions that you're making that's leading to this. And then the more that you can see that, you just make different decisions, because she's never been groped in a temple before, because there's people here that are into wholesome things. But when you put your body into a situation where you're around a bunch of intoxicated people, these are the kinds of things that can happen. So there's always some decisions that you're making that's leading to any unwholesome result. And the more you understand the natural law of karma and you cultivate wisdom about it, you'll be able to modify your decisions and experience different results.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I have a fear that I just gained recently.
That what?
And it's
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's a fear that I've just gained recently.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, I think I kind of had this fear for a longer time. And I think sadly, nowadays, most women fear about being raped at some point in their life, because you always hear about it in the news. But for me, the fear got even bigger, because lately there was an incident very close to my house where a man approached a woman right at the bus station, which is in front of our house, and she tried to escape him, And we have a very big like parking lot in front of our house, and there's a carport where my car is like placed. And she tried to escape him, and she went like into my carport where my car is, and he ended up raping her like in there. And then the police came, and they like ringed at our door and like asked us if we maybe saw something, or if any one of us like, if we have anything to say. And we didn't notice because we didn't like look out of the window, or nobody passed by. And it happened a few months ago, but a few days ago, like it was in the news, and that the guy finally confessed to the crime. And there was also an incident like close to the house of a friend of mine, where a guy raped a girl like for several hours, like at the train station, and she couldn't get any help. And I don't see how I can eliminate this fear, because like, I mean, okay, I could maybe like practice self-defense and do something that I can feel more safe with, because I can defend myself. But I don't think that is always possible, because there are also sometimes incidents where like several men are raping one woman, and I don't see where I would have the chance to like defend myself. And it's not something that I can just cut off, or like, oh, I'm making wise decisions because I would just not leave my house anymore, because it's like not that I went to a bar or the girl went to a bar and it happened. It's just like out on the streets. My sister, like on this day, she came back from work and she had to like walk a little way from the train station to our house. And it could also have happened to her, because the man was just like right on the streets, and it wasn't even like in the night or when it was dark. It was like during the day. And I don't see how I can eliminate this fear, or how it would help me.
Sure, I'll help you. So obviously, it's really unfortunate whenever these kinds of things happen, and those people are all going to experience their gamma for having raped this person. They're going to experience that, but it's always unfortunate when these things happen. But just going to get self-defense classes, why that could be potentially a wise idea in order to just have some skills, it's not going to eliminate your fear, because it's the craving, desire, attachment that's causing it. So it can be a wise decision to go have some self-defense skills for any number of reasons, but what's going to eliminate this fear is eliminating the craving, desire, attachment. And the same thing that I taught with reflection on death, you can use that same technique for these kinds of situations, where you can sit and close your eyes and envision in your mind over a 10-minute, 15, 20-minute period that you've actually getting raped. And I know this can sound very odd for people, and it can be like, oh my God, that's horrible. Why would I ever do that to this mind? Well, the reason why is because you have to really confront this. And of course, the high percentage is that you'll probably never have this occur to you. You know that. So because this is in the mind and the mind fears it, you're going to have to confront it and train your mind to let it go. And you're going to probably need to do this over multiple sessions. And you can obviously get very upset and very fearful as this is going on within your own mind. But when you're confronting it, you're like triggering it, and now the mind has to cut it off and let it go. One of the ways to think about it is what we do is we bury these things inside of our mind. And then what I'm teaching you to do by confronting it is it's like pulling the carpet back and getting the dust to fly all over the place, and you're clearing it out of the house. So if we just suppress these fears, which the craving, desire, attachment is what's causing it, if we just suppress these things and allow it to stay in our mind, then you'll just always have the fear. But if you can confront it, it's like pulling the carpet back, letting all the dust fly, and then clearing the dust out of the house. And now you won't have that fear anymore. So that's the same thing that I taught with contemplation of death or reflection of death. You can do it with these kinds of situations too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
So would this technique would work like for any kind of fear where you obviously cannot put yourself in that situation? Because I understand, like, to be around what scares you, like being around snakes or rats or something like that. But yeah, fears like being raped, or I don't know, maybe losing all of your money, or somebody dies. This technique, it's something you would recommend for all these fears you cannot put yourself into?
Yeah, you can do that with all those kinds of situations. Even sometimes people tell me they're afraid of being homeless and things like this. You can put your mind in that situation through imagining it in your mind and literally convince yourself that these things are happening and play it out within your mind's eye, within the mind. And this will allow the mind to confront it and move through it so that now the mind can let go of this craving, desire, attachment. Because as long as you do nothing, that craving is going to stay there. That's going to stay there, and you're just going to keep being fearful over and over and over again. But if you confront it, then you can eliminate this fear.
So, what if you cannot really visualize it? Like, I don't know, being afraid of not knowing what to choose to do in life, and you just don't know how to visualize yourself in the future.
Did you say you're afraid of not knowing the truth of life?
No. Of not knowing what to choose in life, like what to do, those kind of things.
Oh, like fear of lack of wisdom of how to conduct your life?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So there's two ways to eliminate a craving, desire, attachment. There's one way is, which I've been talking about quite a bit, which is to cut it off and let it go. That's essentially what you're doing when you're confronting your fears. And the way that we're talking about is you're confronting this and the craving is being triggered, and then you have to cut it off and let it go, right? That's what the breathing mindfulness meditation is doing. That's what the generosity is doing, is training your mind to let these fears go. That's one way to eliminate a craving, desire, attachment. The other way is to actually fulfill a certain craving, desire, attachment. So for example, if I always wanted to go to the Philippines and I'm longing, yearning to go to the Philippines, and I have this craving to go to the Philippines, one of the ways to eliminate this is, yes, cut that off and let it go, train the mind to let it go. The other way is to just go to the Philippines and experience the Philippines, and now go around and check it out, see it, and now your mind will let go of that craving. But you have to be attentive to the mind, because now it might crave to go to Hong Kong or Tokyo or somewhere else, right? So you have to be attentive to the mind, but you can actually fulfill a certain craving. Like if somebody's always wanted to have a life partner and always wanted to have a kid, well, if you get a life partner and you have a child, you'll extinguish that craving. Of course, you'll be attached to them themselves, which you need to eliminate that. But nonetheless, you'll extinguish this craving of having a kid because you've actually had a child, right? So this kind of craving of, gosh, I fear not having the wisdom to conduct my life, you need to fulfill that by cultivating the wisdom through the natural laws of existence. When you cultivate the wisdom of the natural laws, you'll have all the wisdom you need to live this life peacefully. And then you'll have extinguished that craving, which is producing this fear of, oh my goodness, what can I do in life? I'm so fearful of not knowing what I should or shouldn't be doing. You'll actually be doing it because you'll have the wisdom that you need. So you will have extinguished that craving by fulfilling it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see. Do we have any other questions anywhere? All right. I'm not seeing any other questions. Do we have more questions? Do you guys have more? Yeah?
I have one more question. It's more like a personal one. You said that in order to like eliminate our attachments or like the fear of maybe losing loved ones, we should like also like imagine like their death and maybe do this all over again until we are not that sad about it anymore. So would you say for yourself that you have already succeeded in eliminating all of your attachments? Because like from the past few days where we got to know you a little bit, I know that you have like a son and a wife. So would you say that if one of them died right now, you wouldn't feel sadness because you eliminated your attachment to them and you've also like imagined their deaths? Because like as a father, I don't know if it's even possible to not feel sad if your child dies or if your loved wife dies? Like, do you know how I?
Yes. I wouldn't have any sadness. Oftentimes people think that you feel sad because you love. And they think it's love that's causing the sadness, but it's not the love. The love is a genuine interest in seeing this being be well. And when the mind has craving, desire, attachment, the mind is craving for this being to be permanent. And now when you're not getting what you want, which is they died, now you'll feel sad or you'll grieve. So when my mom died in 2017, I didn't grieve at all. I didn't have any sorrow or any sadness because I'd already done this reflection of death back in my early 20s for my mom and my grandmother. And I know that I already eliminated my attachment to them. So when my mom died, there was no sadness. My grandmother's still alive. She's going to die next. She's like 100 years old. I know that I'm not going to have any sadness whatsoever. But I love her dearly. She was very impactful in my life and helped me tremendously in my life. I love my son and I love my wife, but I'm not going to have any sadness because I don't crave for them to be permanent. And I've seen this situation where, like, my son had a toe surgery a few months ago, and the doctor was essentially cutting off his big toe nail and removing it. And as I was there when it was happening, and my son was screaming and yelling and crying, and I was just smiling, and I was like, it's okay, it'll be all done, it's okay. Where a parent who's attached to their child, they'll be really torn up in those situations. So when you do enough training of your mind, and then you have various experiences where you know that if you were attached to this being, you would be upset, or you would grieve, or you would be sad, and you see your mind doesn't do that, and you'll know that you've eliminated your attachment. Like when my wife recently went to America for 2 months, me and my son, we didn't miss her at all. Right? And it's not because we don't love her. When you're missing someone, it's because you're attached to them. And it's like, when you're here, we're happy. But when you're away, we miss you and we feel miserable and we're longing, yearning for you to come back. And we just can't wait for you to come back. This is attachment. So when you learn these teachings and you get your life up to the point where you're practicing them, and now you go an extended period of time at practicing them, and you see that your mind isn't experiencing the discontentedness, where in other situations in the past, or those same situations in the past, you did experience discontentedness, and now you're not experiencing that anymore, you'll know that your mind's eliminated your attachment to these people. Those are some of the most challenging attachments to eliminate, are the ones that are the people that are closest to you. And that's why I teach a class on that. But it is possible for you to eliminate these attachments. Just right now, you don't have the wisdom of that. And you haven't probably been around somebody that has done that before, because you probably grew up in a country that's not Buddhist. So you haven't been around people who have trained their mind to that point. But now you're in a place where there's lots of people who have trained their mind to that point. If you go to a Thai funeral, it's not a bunch of crying and boohooing and people feeling miserable. They actually have food and spend time with each other, and they laugh and they joke and they have a good time. It's not this time to sit around and feel miserable. If you ever went to a funeral in Thailand, it's completely different than a funeral in the Western world, because people, if there's people there that do have attachment, you'll see them, being tearful, but it's very few and far between that you'll see that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, it's learning more about what is love and true love, understanding what attachment is, and these are two different things, and understanding how to love without attachment. And this is something you need to be able to learn. And it's very freeing and it's very liberating, because if you were attached to all these different people in your life, when they start dying, it feels like someone pulled the carpet out from under your feet, or you've got cut off at your knees. And there's this better way of life that the Buddha taught, that you don't have to feel that way. You don't have to feel like someone pulled the carpet out from under your feet or cut you off at the knees when someone dies. And this is the beauty of life, is that you can get to a point where you're just always peaceful. And it doesn't mean you don't love the person. It just means you're not attached to them. You're not forming your feelings based on them.
My mind understands what you're saying, but then a part of me also find it difficult to, because what you're saying is literally to go through life without feeling either like happy or sad or frustrated, all of these feelings that makes us human also, right? To have these feelings and experience happiness and sadness and missing someone. I always heard this like, missing is a good thing because it means that it's something that matters to you. So you should not feel bad for missing someone. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's like...
Okay, I'll help you. So these are the things that your mind's been exposed to in the past, that missing someone is a good thing. This is conditioning of your mind in a lack of wisdom, that you don't have to go through life missing someone. The conditioned feelings that we're talking about, that you're eliminating, these are conditioned feelings. So in your current state, or the way your mind is currently functioning, you can only be happy when this is happening and this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. Certain conditions are met, then you'll be happy. So your happiness is a certain amount, and the more expectations, the more wants you have, your happiness is going to shrink, right? What I'm talking about and what the Buddha is teaching you is how to be happy all the time, how to always be happy, unconditioned happiness. So the idea of feelings is what makes you human. Feelings is what makes you feel terrible and feel miserable and feel heartache and lonely and bored and miserable. And that's not what it means to be human. That's what it means to be an unenlightened human. But to be an enlightened human, where you can experience the peace and joy all the time, no matter what's happening in your life, that's very fulfilling, very satisfying. You can be happy all the time. So when we talk about eliminating conditioned feelings, sometimes people think, oh, if I'm eliminating feelings, wouldn't I feel numb? I'd feel nothing. That's not what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is where you no longer have conditioned feelings, where you're basing your feelings on some condition. And you're going to need to let go of all of this lack of wisdom and all of this misperceptions that you've heard all throughout your life, that somehow having these feelings makes you human, or somehow by missing something that means that it's important and it matters. This isn't true. This is all lack of wisdom that people are teaching these kinds of things. Out in the world, you have tons of people who are experiencing anger and frustration and bitterness and hostility and resentment. You can choose to stay in that if you like. That's a choice that everybody makes. But what I'm sharing is there's this better way of life. And this better way of life is to always experience happiness, to always be joyful, that your mind is just always uplifted. It's bright, it's cheerful, no matter what's happening in life. You're not going to understand what that is 100% until you're making your way to it and you're starting to experience it more and more. You're not going to understand it just sitting here talking about it all 100%.
But it's the way then to approach when you find yourself in a situation where you're really missing someone and you get upset, and is it then to also like cut it off and let it go and not like let yourself feel that way? Or is it more the other approach of like imagining that, like you said before, that you're exposed your mind to the fact that you're far away from your family, and how do you, which approach do you use in this example?
So that's why I mentioned the Eightfold Path. You have to know the Eightfold Path before you do what I'm teaching you here about eliminating fears, because the Eightfold Path is going to teach you that whenever you're in a situation when you're experiencing discontentedness, even conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings are neither painful nor pleasant, you need to cut those off and let them go. That's what the Eightfold Path is teaching you, to have your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, and then whenever you're noticing the bodily sensations associated with conditioned feelings, you cut it off and let it go. You're essentially not allowing the mind to form a conditioned feeling, because as long as you allow your mind to stay wired that way, it's going to keep experiencing those over and over and over again. But you will. Between now and enlightenment, you're going to experience some conditioned feelings. The things that I'm teaching you, you're not going to be able to instantly implement them right away. So over the next few years, you're going to experience conditioned feelings, but they're going to become less and less and less and less. And the way that you do that is by training your mind with meditation and all the other factors of the Eightfold Path, right intention, right speech, right action. All of those things are training your mind to knock down your craving. And this is going to slowly diminish your discontentedness. But then there's going to be some situations where you have fear and you need something targeted in order to target that fear. And what you got to do is you got to trigger that craving that is producing the fear. You've got to do these things that I'm talking about, which is put your mind in that situation in order to trigger it so that then the mind has an opportunity to let it go. And that's how you're going to ultimately clear this craving out of your mind. So that now when you see a snake, no problem. It's just another being. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt this being. I'm not causing it any harm. It's just going to sliver around and crawl around. No big deal. I don't have to be fearful. It's just another being, right? But when you have these cravings where you never want to see a snake, you're going to have fear. So these kinds of things that I'm talking about is getting to the unconditioned peace and joy. The thing that you're talking about is sticking with the misery, the missing, the loneliness, the boredom. That doesn't make you human. That makes you very uncomfortable when you're experiencing those things. And you're going to need to get to the point where you see these feelings as undesirable, including the conditioned pleasant feelings, so that your mind isn't just happy based on a condition, but it's happy all the time, at all times of your day. That's what you're able to get to if you decide to apply effort to do it. Mm-hmm. It's somewhat counterintuitive for people, the idea of eliminating conditioned pleasant feelings, because that's what you're living for. You basically chase after money or whatever it is that we chase after, food, clothing, and you get happy when you get those things. You get excited when you get those things. And the mind is so used to doing that for so many years. And to hear the idea of like, why would I eliminate those things? Well, you're eliminating that because that's conditional. You can only be happy when you get those things. And that's why the mind ends up in these painful feelings over here. So if you keep allowing the mind to form these feelings, these conditional feelings based on some condition, your mind's just going to keep going up and down, where you can get to the point where you're just always happy and you're just always joyful. But you need to be able to see the problem, which is explained in that first noble truth, that the problem is the discontentedness, these conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you're going to be happy, sad, frustrated, or whatever. So if my wife is with me and she's living at home with us in the house, I'm going to be happy. But now when she goes away, I'm going to be sad. I'm going to miss her. Your mind's bound up. That means all she has to do is go away to America. She works for 2 months in America, and she's doing this twice a year. So she's away from us for 4 months of the year. So if we're attached to my wife, my son's attached to his mom, that means 4 months of the year we feel miserable. You can choose to live that way, right? And the other 8 months of the year, you're happy and you're excited because mom's home, right? You can choose to live that way, but there's this better way where when mom's home, we're happy, but we're not happy because mom's home. We're just happy. And then when mom leaves, we're still happy. Right? That's a better way to live life. That makes you human. That makes you in this higher consciousness where your mind has evolved to this higher consciousness. And now you can just be happy all the time. And it's a wonderful way to live life. It's this better way of life. But it's hard for you to be able to see it because your mind just doesn't know it. It's kind of like sitting here trying to explain chocolate ice cream, but yet you've never tasted chocolate ice cream before. So you got to be able to learn and practice, have enough confidence that you can see, wow, yeah, that would be wonderful to be happy all the time. Let me work my way towards it. And then as you're working your way towards it, you'll be able to see it happening for you more and more. And you'll be able to see these discontent feelings shrinking, and you'll see more and more happiness and joy coming into your mind, and you'll know you're making your way to it. Victoria, you have a question?
So I was thinking that based on what we learned yesterday, where you told us about how this existence is about getting to be more and more human, because these conditioned feelings, they don't make us any different to animals. They experience them as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So then, as we learned, I would conclude that indeed getting to be more human is getting to be towards the unconditioned mental states rather than those conditioned feelings, correct?
Exactly. That's why I taught you guys that yesterday. And, with our lack of wisdom, having grown up in the Western world, we don't even realize that what I'm describing is even an option. We just think that, part of being human is that we're going to be sad and we're going to be angry. And we just kind of have accepted that this is just the way life is. We're just going to be sad. We're going to be angry. We're going to be happy. We're going to be frustrated. We're going to be annoyed. We're going to be bored. We're going to be lonely. And we just kind of accepted it. And what I'm sharing with you is you can opt out of this. There is an option for you that completely get out of all of this. And it's an option that you didn't even know existed until you've come to a place like this where somebody can explain to you how to actually accomplish it. So there's another option for you. And it really kind of rattles the mind because we go through life thinking that we're so wise and we're so smart, especially when we're in our 20s and our 30s. We think we've kind of figured out this life to a certain degree. And then when you talk to somebody and they're like, you haven't figured it out yet. There's a whole lot of wisdom out here that you don't know yet. And there's a whole lot of things here that you can evolve to. And the mind's like, I don't want to do that work. The mind becomes complacent. It's like, no, I don't want to go do that. So sometimes a teacher sharing with you like, there's all this wisdom for you to learn. Sometimes people are like, I don't want to do that. And if that's what someone does, then fine, that's on them. But if somebody would like to apply the effort and energy to learn and grow and develop, there's this completely better way of life for them. And it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why I've dedicated the rest of my life to doing this. And that's why I do it for no cost. You guys don't have to pay me anything. It's like discovering the cure to cancer. I would like to give it away to everybody for free, right? So that's how confident that I am that what I'm teaching you will absolutely lead to your enlightenment, that I don't even charge you, right? There's no fees for anything. Books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats, personal guidance, anything. You can come learn with me because I know that if you investigate these teachings close enough, you'll get to this enlightened mental state and you'll thoroughly enjoy it. All right. Anything else you guys would like to ask? I don't see anything online. Nice to see all you guys online this morning. Okay, so it's is it 10:23? Is that what it says? 10:30. Okay. 10:28. Okay, I had to turn my phone off because it was ringing and I wasn't interested in it coming through the computer. So let's just call it 10:30. So I've got this other topic to share with you guys to help you guys. Is this topic on God's creative action. You have free will. This is going to help you understand how to have a relationship with God and get to enlightenment if you'd like. But there's certain things that you've probably learned about this being that you're going to need to undo this conditioning. And then if you're not interested in having a relationship with this being, I can teach you how to get to enlightenment in that way too. But there are certain things you need to understand in order to be able to do that. So I'll teach you guys this after our break. Let's take a good 20-minute break and get back together at 10:50, and then I'll pick it up from there. So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your discussion. It's nice to talk with all of you guys. So I'll talk with you some more in about 20 minutes. Enjoy your break. Okay.